Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second day of EA Global Summit 2022. This is Nabil from the EA Global Summit organizing team. Thanks, everyone, for joining us and for your input for this session. The session will be presented by Nizam, challenges of organizations. Spark System has invested a lot of time and effort in Spark Systems tools. The tooling landscape has evolved significantly in the last few years as part of the digital transformation strategy. Organizations all over the world are rapidly replacing their legacy applications and on-premise data centers with more flexible and adaptable cloud alternatives. This also raises concern over data and security. So let us hear from Nizam how the new product EA SaaS, which is the cloud variant of popular and reputed Sparx Enterprise Architect modeling tool, address the growing needs of organizations and how it can be used by both the existing and new Sparx EA teams. So before we start the presentation, let me explain how participants can interact with the presenter and his team. Since the presentation, participants are muted throughout the session. If any of you have any queries, please use the chat window and drop your questions to the speaker. And at the end of the session, Nizam will answer those questions. And to enable collaboration and communication with Nizam, after the session, we request you to visit the dedicated Teams channel. If you have any difficulty in connecting to the Teams, please reach us at registrations@eaglobalsummit.com. Thanks once again for your interest and support. Looking forward for the wonderful session with Nizam.
Thank you, Nabil. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. And this is Nizam. I'm from the Salesforce and Spark Systems team. I work closely with the collaborate product management team and the cloud deployment platforms. So in today's session, we'll be looking at how the Sparx Systems suite of products has evolved to be a cloud-centric SaaS offering to satisfy the growing needs of teams, especially post-COVID, where there's a significant shift towards a cloud-first strategy as opposed to having an on-premise data centers and doing things in-house. So today, this is the quick agenda that we'll be looking at. So we'll start with an introduction to what is SaaS, which most of us would already know. And then instead of just keeping it conceptual, just going through the concepts, I would like to give a live demo of how it works. This is relatively new in the Sparx ecosystem, and there is still a lot of skepticism and lack of clarity on what we really mean by SaaS. People are so used to the thick client application that we've been installing in our machines for ages, and all of a sudden we come here and say, hey, you don't have to install anything, you could just start working with the SaaS offering. And people assume a lot of things. People think it's a web browser that I'm going to work on. People think like it's a cut down version of Enterprise Architect that will be offered. So what we are going to do is see a demo of how it really works. And then I'll go through some nitty-gritties and nuances from the cloud side and the Sparx side that is favoring such an environment. It's not just they come tomorrow and we start with cloud. The product has been in the market, in existence for more than 22 years now, and it was built for a different architecture, for a different way of working, and lifting and shifting something like that into a cloud-first strategy and making it scalable and responsive in the modern cloud environments hasn't been that easy. And we have done a fair bit of R&D and come up with a lot of innovative solutions to address this. So we'll be going through some of those, and then we'll give you an overview of what are the kind of offerings that we have, and what are the specifics, like nuances that you be interested in, especially with SSOs and how it aligns with your corporate authentication systems and things like that. So to start with, when we talk about software as a service, everyone kind of understands this. But what is software as a service when it comes to an application like Enterprise Architect? So I presume most of the people here are Enterprise Architect users who are so used to installing something in their machine and starting with it. There's been similar applications. So there are a number of applications in the market which has always been doing this. But a significant change in the cloud providers, the offerings that the cloud providers like AWS and Azure has come up with has changed the way these applications are expected to be used. So in the past, we always had the Citrix and virtual workspaces and remote desktops into some environments. That's still existing, but those are all pretty much like technology of the yesteryear. What we are talking about is application streaming. That's the concept behind. But like using that application streaming, we are now able to centrally manage and deliver applications to any computers with secure database connectivity and seamless scalability and things like that. And that's exactly what we have achieved for the Sparx platform as well. So it's pretty much like subscribe and start using almost instantly, and you could just use your browsers to start working on it. Doesn't matter if it's a Windows or a Mac or Linux or anything of that sort. So that's the first step. A SaaS applied on an application which is like a thick client application. And when we talk about cloud is the future, like most people in the field kind of give us a sarcastic, you can say, that's a thing of the past. It should have happened like a couple of years ago. But what has really changed the whole landscape is the COVID and the kind of sudden rude awakening that COVID and the lockdowns gave to the entire world. And that's what kind of emphasized the importance of having a SaaS offering. So I'm just going to start with a SaaS, like an EA SaaS demo. And I wanted to do it live because I've done recorded demos in the past and still people had confusion. So all we need to give to your users is one link, and clicking on that link will open a browser. And this, with your SaaS application with custom branding and things like that. Let me just start from first. I'll just sign out to say your landing page will be something that you could personalize and have this like single URL that you share to all your Sparx EA users, and they just log into it, and they log into it through SSO in most cases. In my setup, I don't have an SSO integrated, but if you have SAML or anything of that sort, you just log in with SSO, which will take you through your two-factor authentication and all that prerequisites, security prerequisites. And from here, I am tailoring my demo only for Enterprise Architect application. However, if you have subscribed to Prolaborate or Web EA or any other application, this portal will show you additional applications. So to your end users, I've been an EA consultant for a good part of my career, and we have to give a lot of heads up on how to get even started with the tools. But with such a platform, that is even simplified. You just give them a URL and they click on it, and they get to see the tools that is provisioned to them. So if there is an EA modeler, they get to see just Enterprise Architect. If there is only someone who has to view it and review and collaborate on a platform, they get to see only Prolaborate. If there is a user who is entitled to use both, they get to see both. So it's all kind of taken care by central user administration, and you don't have to repeat anything whatsoever. So this user management at an application level is kind of completely eliminated. And the next thing you see is you kind of log into a repository as the user, you just signed in as. So this is like I'm accessing the repository as the user. I just signed in a browser. So it's pretty much end-to-end integrated with your SSO. And now what I'm connected to is a EA model that is hosted. Like we have tried to imitate a real-time scenario. This is a repository that's hosted in an AWS server in Sydney. So I have every problem that every company would have, like the latency, geographical location, like, varying geographical locations, which all kind of slows down the user experience. We have set up an environment in that way, and I'm connecting to an EA model that is hosted in an in a Sydney AWS environment, and I'm connecting to it from Asia, like India, and all the latency that you would expect is there. And if you start working on this, what we have achieved is, like, I'm working on a central repository connected through a cloud connection, and I'm working from an EA application. And what you would see is a benchmark performance. So we call something as a benchmark performance, and that is when you install Enterprise Architect in your local machine and you work in an EAP file or a QEA file, that's what our benchmark performance is. And what we have achieved is close to a benchmark performance when you are working on a remote model as well. So, you just pretty much could do whatever you are, what you expect to do in a normal EA environment. So this is, for example, the EA model with plenty of traceability in it, like, connections to various different layers in it. So if I want to switch from here to another diagram, so I'm just going to find another diagram and switch to it. So I just navigate between diagrams and I look at it, I can see the traceability. If I want to create a view or a diagram using this, so I'm just going to expand and open a new diagram, paste an object, and just say, insert related elements. And I'm just going to insert them all. These are all the use cases where people would have a lot of latency showing up, and there's like painstaking experience in the past where people always have complained that it's slow, it's kind of stuck, it's taking a lot of time to do it. And I'm just demonstrating these use cases because people, especially who are already EA users, would understand this is where it has been a problem in the past. And now I've got, let's say, a couple of applications here, and this is a package. And if one of the hardest challenge for a remote, or a central environment in Enterprise Architect is imports and exports. And I'm just going to import a file into my model and just show you that it almost works like, works seamlessly, like it is expected to do in a normal local installation. So I am importing in a central repository connected in a different continent. I have the geographical separation here, and I have the latency in between, but it just took a couple of seconds to import it. So what we are talking about is a full-fledged Enterprise Architect application, and I left it this way just so that it's a browser. If I click this and start working on it, unless you come to terms, you wouldn't see that it's coming from a browser or it's through a desktop application. So the performance is kind of seamless. The experience is almost equivalent to your desktop installed application, and that's what a EA SaaS offering is. The reason I wanted to go through this in a little more detail is many a times I've spoken about it, and people always seem to have some kind of a skepticism of whether it really works in the way they would expect it to work. So that's why I started with the demo. And now that we know that it is available as a cloud offering, so what you could do is you could just say, like how you buy an EA Corporate or an EA Ultimate Edition, you could just go buy an EA SaaS offering and start using it. But then comes the questions about security concerns, the organizational policies, which doesn't allow us to just move to a cloud infrastructure. All the existing infrastructure and databases and setup that we have in-house, the tech debt, and pretty much lack of awareness has been a big issue. Like, people have been procrastinating this decision to move to Sparx because they assume it's not possible to get it on cloud. So that's another big challenge that we are addressing. And obviously decisions and approvals internally. But apart from this, on a lighter note, there are also other things that people have been in the past assuming about cloud. Like, this is a real survey done and reported by Business Insider, where a good percentage of the people out of 1,000 people in America who are surveyed, they think that stormy weather could interfere with the functionality of the cloud. So that's really, really bad, but that's quite a while ago. But things have moved on. So post COVID-19, most of the concerns that I listed in the previous slide has been addressed. So people have been waiting for an external trigger to kind of initiate this digital transformation, and come COVID-19, it has been the biggest driver, because we were forcibly made to shut down and move out of our offices, and that kind of pushed us to do everything in a more agile and digital way, and that has been the starting point for this excess interest and adoption towards the SaaS offerings. And in terms of a post-COVID era, the security policies and assessment criteria have been revised globally. So I've been a consultant, as I said, and there's been instances where I wouldn't even be able to join a Teams call of a client when they share an invite. The security policies will prevent it. The same client, I was continuing to work through the COVID, they opened up their SharePoint to me and said, okay, just get all the files that you want and just start working in your local machine. It's a paradigm shift which we have all seen and witnessed live. And need for a remote collaboration and productivity tools has increased and multifold. And there are really, people realize single point of failure, having people to manage it on premises, a big risk, and it's hard to get those people always on board in critical scenarios. So all this have pretty much rewritten the way people or the new projects and new teams approach tooling, and that's where Sparx Systems has also come on board and embarked on, kind of noticed these changes and have catered the products to make it cloud ready and SaaS ready as well. In terms of the product itself, with the inception of the PCS, we are now able to connect to a central repository from anywhere. And with EA 16, they even introduced, replaced the legacy MS Access with something more powerful and robust, like the SQLite kind of a databases. So there's been some advancements in EA as a product as well, but then there's also been extensive focus on optimizing and streamlining EA's performance. For example, there's been these are just sharing the insights based on experience. There's been a number of reports saying that there's been timeouts when we work on a remote environment. There's been latency, latency causing a lot of disruption while working on XML exports and imports. That's all been taken into consideration and addressed in EA 16. These are excerpts from Tom's session, Tom O'Reilly, the COO of Sparx Systems, who presented earlier today about how Sparx Systems responded to all the demands and needs of a post-COVID era. And I've just taken some excerpts from his slides. So this is one of the slides. And another slide, he also mentioned about how Enterprise Architect will now support cloud deployment, because we all understand EA has been always an installable application, and the registries and app data are all very specific to a machine. But when we go to cloud and it's a distributed setup, we need to have backups operating on key data. So all to cater to that kind of a requirement, the registry settings and the app data and all the complex user specific information has been moved out to be stored in a shared location, which could be regularly backed up and restored on demand. So these are all some of the enhancements from the Sparx EA side to cater to the SaaS offering. And again, this is an excerpt from Tom's session as well. So Jeff Sparks, who is the CEO of Sparx Systems Australia, in his note to the users earlier today, said there's been an extraordinary year, and the Sparx Systems is kind of gearing up to satisfy and address those demands. And one of the things that they mentioned about is the SaaS platform with major upgrades to 16.1 to cater to a seamless experience in cloud. So this is all just to show you that the whole team here is kind of geared up to address the growing demands for cloud and SaaS. And what we also have done is our team has done a lot of R&D. So there are offerings from Amazon and Azure which will help us do the streaming, but they were generic. They were not specific enough for the Sparx platform to help us achieve a seamless experience for our users. There's been a number of hiccups if we try to use AppStream or if we try to use Azure Virtual Desktop out of the box. It's still possible, but there's been a number of challenges which were not addressed, and we don't expect them to address because they are not specifically done for Sparx systems. So what we did was we kind of extended the Amazon AppStream concept and tailored it and came up with an offering specific to Sparx systems, which is intended to give that smooth experience for the Sparx users. And that product has also been endorsed by the Amazon Web Services, and there was a case study published by AWS, recognizing this offering. And in that, they kind of mentioned how our offering satisfies and exceeds their expectation of a cloud offering, and that is also using the best and the latest from AWS to make sure it's highly secure, scalable, easy to deploy, and robust. So we are using the latest and greatest from these cloud providers to come up with the best offering, and that's been endorsed by AWS as well. So Sparx Systems is evolving and changing to the cloud needs, and we have also got the offering that is endorsed by the cloud providers as well, and that's what we are taking to the customers as a SaaS offering today. So that is about the product and how we have evolved in the product side. But then there's also this whole ecosystem that has evolved. We are looking at the requests that are coming through to us. So the market has changed. So in terms of 40% of the new requests are cloud deployment. So even if we kind of give a pushback to say, no, we can't do that under your current security conditions, they come back to us with further negotiations and relaxations to their security policies to get cloud deployment. There are some organizations still whose security policies are written like 30 years back and still stick to it. We have to, we unavoidably have to say no, because we can't satisfy all those requirements. But they come back with the relaxed requirements to make sure they go cloud, and they are not willing to go on premise. The technology has evolved rapidly. As I said, there has been technology innovations from both key providers. We are not using GCP in this enterprise grade deployments. For some, it's Amazon or AWS. That's where we are mostly focusing on, and they have evolved significantly as well. And the product has also changed. As I said, the offerings have both Sparx Systems, EA Enterprise Architect, and Collaborate, and Pro Cloud Server. Each of these offerings have been optimized to make sure the cloud offering is smooth. And then we also have the support network. We have an extensive support network across the globe who is well versed of these offerings, and who are ready to take on board an existing EA deployment, give you an assessment, and help you with the migration, and get you on board with the new solution. So the whole ecosystem has also evolved in the last couple of years. And just moving forward, this is just some examples to show the market maturity and how people have responded to their initial experience with Enterprise Architect SaaS. And these are some recent examples that I've just taken. And you could see that we have tested the performance of Sparx EA SaaS, and the speed was much better than what we would conventionally use through a thick client. So what we are addressing is some key pain points in an enterprise grade deployment, where people have always had difficulty in adoption because of its latency and slow and sluggishness. Those have been totally addressed, and it's much smoother and faster experience that we are offering to the customers. And also going live, this is another example where these are all really seasoned EA developers, and when they want to roll out Enterprise Architect so that they could very quickly start with some work to like a work or a project, they wouldn't be able to do it through the bureaucracy within their organization. Rather, getting into a SaaS and starting will allow them to go live in pretty much like a couple of days. That's 3 to 5 days is what we usually say to get someone started, unless there is a huge repository legacy database that is sitting there which needs to be migrated, in which case we will do a project plan. And even in that case, it wouldn't be months together. The infrastructure provisioning will be instant, in a couple of days, but then the migration should be planned and executed. So it's rapid deployment, instant, quick time to go live. That's all kind of the advantages. And how do we get started? So when we talk about EA SaaS, again, in the past, a cloud offering from Sparx Systems at least, has been primarily targeting large companies. But with the current setup and EA 16 and QEA files, with all the changes that I spoke about previously, even individual consultants could just start with EA SaaS and get going. They don't need a central repository. They could just start with a QEA file, and EA 16 powered SQLite will allow us to have something robust that can be relied upon. Like, EAP files are good, but it's an MS Access based one, and that would fail miserably when it comes to multiple people accessing it. But EA 16 has addressed that as well. Or if you are a small to medium-sized team and you do not really want all the complex integrations, or you don't want to have all the SaaS, SSOs and things like that, you could just start with a small size deployment and with optimal security settings and go live. But if you are a large enterprise grade deployment, if you're after a large enterprise grade deployment, that's also possible. So there are offerings tailored for specific use cases and specific team sizes. So there's you could have flexible deployment options. You can start small and scale up. You can try for a couple of days before you really buy it. So we are also offering support. We're supporting people when they have issues with Pro Cloud Server deployments, or some issues in setting up, in getting the ideal performance. And in those cases, we even provision a SaaS environment so that they could try it out and see how the actual environment should work versus what their internal environment is doing. And that is also a good, that's proven to be really a good way to give an actual picture to the users, so that they come on board EA SaaS and adopt this. So there are plenty of options to help people get started. And in terms of cloud platform, this is another confusion that prevails in the market. When we talk about cloud platform, yes, ideally you could have the entire Sparx platform on cloud, which includes Collaborate and all the integrations and the entire platform on cloud, so that there's zero installation and all you need is give us your requirements and you get started. But if you are not really into Collaborate or integrations, all you want is a central repository to facilitate team-based modeling, and you want Enterprise Architect for your modelers, let's say 5 to 6 modelers to just start, that is also a possibility. So this is the offering that I am kind of focusing on in this webinar. So not talking about Collaborate at all. So this is, I want a central repository, I want a couple of modelers to get started tomorrow. That's the requirement we are talking about. The central repository can be set up in the region that is, that you are located in. So it kind of takes into considerations the GDPRs and all the regional restrictions that a country or an organization will have. So it's located in the local AWS instance and provisioned fairly quickly. And there are also multiple offerings in EA SaaS. Again, why? Because not everyone's needs are the same. So one size doesn't fit all. So some people will come and say, just give us during business hours, and I'm not really after SSOs and things like that. So there's a very simple offering that they could start with. The most popular one is this enterprise standard, where they have single URL, custom landing pages, custom branding, and then they get started with Enterprise Architect. But then there are advanced users who use plenty of additional add-ons, partner add-ons and things like that, and integrations. They could go for a more premium support enabled offerings as well. So there are standard offerings for different use cases as well. So that's one, that's kind of an introduction to what we mean by what are we talking about when we say EA SaaS, and what are the advancements in the Sparx world, in the cloud providers world, that has given a strong reason for you to consider moving to cloud and adopting EA SaaS. And additional reasons, so you could just access from anywhere. This is a summary of all the pain points that we would have come across over years of interacting with people. How do I set up EA in my Mac? Okay, here you go. You just have to set up Wine crossover, and then you set up your Enterprise Architect in it. And then the next question is, no, my version of Mac wouldn't support it. Okay, so there are plenty of ifs and buts when it comes to setting up in your side. You could just if it is going to be a SaaS offering, it could just offers a great deal of flexibility. You could just access from anywhere with a compatible browser. And in terms of updates and installations, that's also going to be really simple. You know, you will always have access to the latest and the most stable version. Of course, you have choice. You know, currently we deploy 16.1 and 16, and you know, some people still request for 15.2. That's up to them, but they wouldn't have any limitation on what version they can adopt. Why am I emphasizing this? There's been some example, like, you know, some experience I personally have had. Like, you know, I worked with a bank where we upgraded or renewed our EA subscription. We bought close to about 100 EA licenses when it was EA 13, and then we went and requested for an image update. So we wanted the central software deployment to re-image with EA 14, and by the time we got the approval and 14 was approved, it was already 15 or something like that. So it almost took 9 months to 1 year to even get that approval to install an update. And that kind of, you know, when a project is in flight and you know you have all the requirements to model something using the latest software, you need the software right now, right then. If it's going to have a year delay, you're going to lose interest. It's going to lose that momentum, and people will kind of dwindle down and say, okay, let me use Visio or something else. So that has been an experience of the past, and EA SaaS kind of addresses that as well. And like, you know, scalability in terms of not just numbers, in terms of locations as well. So I start in US, and then I have a team in Europe who has to connect to the same repository and work, and then hey, I got a team from New Zealand who has to connect to the same repository and work as well. There will be a number of bottlenecks and hiccups if you are trying to do it in an on-premise deployment, because it's not really you know, as robust and as fast as a SaaS offering. So scalability and agility is something that you could expect from a EA SaaS offering. And lastly, the overall cost of maintaining your internal infrastructure and getting an approvals and budgeting for, you know, for example, if you want to do a upgrade of your like Collaborate instances, you know, there's been examples where they haven't been given approval for a non-prod or a dev environment, and because of that we were not able to upgrade our Collaborate installation for a number of months there. So you know, there all those additional overheads are addressed when it's a SaaS offering. So that's some of the reasons why you should consider SaaS. And then what is in a SaaS deployment? When you are coming on board, you get a central repository and all the license management that goes with it. So you know, there's literally zero efforts from your side. You just have to say, I would like to start, and that's pretty much it. And if you opt for it, you would have single sign-on with your SAMLs and, like, you know, any of your identity providers. Mostly you know, it will be my Azure AD or Okta or even your LDAP integrations are possible, which means there's only once you need to log in to the platform through a browser, and everything else is kind of taken care of. And then if you need additional assistance, so you have, you know, there's been instances where people come to us and say, we have, like, you know, 5 to 6 repositories, different teams are doing different things. How can I consolidate them all and then move to a central repository? We have, you know, the partner support system, like I mentioned in the previous slide, who can help you do an assessment of your current scenario, give you a roadmap of how to consolidate them all together, and then set it up in a central repository. So that's also something that we would say part of the SaaS deployment. And migrating from your existing repository and existing setup to the new environment, it will be seamless with zero downtime. I mean, that's the guarantee that we try to do. Like, you know, we plan it meticulously well in advance and say, you know, we'll give you time to test it, validate it, and then do a migration when out of your business hours, so that it's zero downtime. Literally, it's a lift and ship. And when you eventually make that move, you know, it's going to be much more like easier to use, and it's going to be significantly faster than a normal WAN deployment. So what is in an EA deployment? Why am I bragging about all this? Like, you know, you could just say, I just download EA, install it, and start working, but that's not the case. You need to have your databases, you need to have your central, even if you ignore the collaborate part, which is optional, you still need a central repository to enable a collaborative modeling environment. You need somewhere to manage your licenses. And then if you're going to have an SSO authentication, you need to integrate to that. And if you have external integrations, you need to integrate to that. So there's a fair bit of complexity in setting up Enterprise Architect and its infrastructure. And all this is what I'm talking about when we say, a professionally set up and managed environment for you. And when you go with this, what is your, what is the end user's experience? Pretty much start working on it. Do not, if not, all of these complications and nuances in setting up is done and managed by our team, and you just have to start using it. And one last point before I kind of close this is this SSO. There is with the remote working and people working not in a closed office, closed environment, now that people are able to work from anywhere, single sign-on based authentication to the tools has the importance of this has become paramount. There is literally no organization that I worked with in the last couple of months have approved anything when we say there's going to be local user management. So if I say I'm going to create users in EA, I'm going to create users in Collaborate, and then I'm going to facilitate access through the user management of Enterprise Architect, we have never managed to get through the security assessment. The only thing that they allow is a centralized identity management system to which these tools should connect and authenticate. So they determine whether the user gets access or not from a central user management, and that's that kind of manifests the importance of single sign-on to this platform. And this is one of the main reasons we have to extend the AWS offering to come up with something of our own. In the past, the experience was like this. So the user logs into AWS or Azure, and for that they need to authenticate themselves through the authentication mechanism, and then they again try to access an EA repository for which they would need another authentication that goes back to the user. They have to authenticate again and then add Collaborate to it or any other tools to it. There's going to be a number of hops. This wasn't giving a really smooth experience to the users at all. And what we have done is with this unified authentication mechanism in the EA SaaS, it will just be that front end or an interface between you and the platform, and you'll authenticate once based on your corporate authentication policies, and from there EA SaaS application will manage access to everything that is behind the scenes. So the user will not be prompted with an SMS or a two-factor authentication another time. So there's only once they would do that. So that's pretty much a quick summary of what EA SaaS is and where we are with this SaaS offering, and how Sparx Systems has kind of put together a number of things to cater to this growing demand for cloud offerings, and how you could get started with it. So thanks, Nabil. Do we have any questions?
Thanks, Nizam. Yeah. So we have a couple of questions. So one is how can we use MDG technology, and can we build MDG technology using EA SaaS?
Yes, of course. So this whatever offering that we showed here, that's a full-fledged EA application. So you can definitely go specialize and import publish MDG technology or import MDG technology. So you do not have any limitation whatsoever with MDGs or anything that EA supports.
Thanks, Nizam. And so what are the hotkeys work as if they were expected on a Sparx client?
Yeah, see, most of the hotkeys work. Yes, that's a really good question. Some of the hotkeys, because it's within the browser, some of the hotkeys may not work because that's controls and alts are sometimes taken by the browsers. But other than that, most of the hotkeys work. For example, if I want to generate documentation, I'm hitting F8. I get the F8. So most of the hotkeys work. I am, I mean, in any terms, I'm a regular EA user and I use hotkeys quite quite extensively. So there are some limitations which I have to accept, but in most cases it works.
Thanks again. And another question is related to the integrations. How we can integrate multiple enterprise applications with EA SaaS, such as Excel macros and like doors and other softwares.
Yeah, so this is where we talk about the entire platform. So EA SaaS is a component, is one component of the platform. So when we talk about a full platform deployment, we are talking about integrations and enterprise architect along with it as well. So we don't have any limitations. Like I mean, I'm just going back a couple of slides to show this. For example, a full setup where we have PCS. Pro Cloud Server is the integration layer, and we have that, and Collaborate is again optional. But with this setup, you'll be able to integrate with your external tools. And if you have Excel macros, this instance, for example, so this Enterprise Architect instance can have MDG Office installed, and it can have. So I have my Office integration already installed in it, which means I can. I mean, we have Excel installed as well. The only caveat here is the licensing for Microsoft Office is something that we need to ascertain. So most of our deployments that we have done in the past, people have an Office 365 subscription that they use within this SaaS platform to open Excels and Visios and Words. However, installing and setting it up is in our part. Like if there's a request for it, we will set up Microsoft Office as well. That will allow Excel macros to work as well.
There are more questions coming in, and so do we have a pricing available soon?
Yeah, the pricing will be available soon in the Sparx Systems website as well. So now we have an indicative pricing available already, but this is not one size fits all usually, but I'll just show you so this will be published in the Sparx Systems website very soon as well. But if we look at EA SaaS, so there's indicative numbers and pricing available here, I presume, but no, I think the pricing is not published yet. But if you require a personalized quote or an estimate of what it will cost you, you could always reach out to us, and our team will connect to you, assess your requirements, and give you a personalized quote for you as well.
Thanks, Nizam. So does the SaaS offering take care of Collaborate migrations? I'm looking to migrate from 3.x to 4.x.
Yes,
so this is
so
something.
3.x to, yeah, I think Nabil, that's your question, but still, if you are intending to migrate from 3.x to 4.x, yes, SaaS deployment will take care of that as well, but our team will be always happy to connect with you, assess your current setup, and then help you with the migration.
Yep. Can we use EA on another device in SaaS deployment? Okay,
I'm just trying to understand the question. So the SaaS deployment is something that you are using in a browser. So if you, any device where there's a browser, you'll be able to use Enterprise Architect. But if you are referring to using Enterprise Architect in your local machine as well, that shouldn't be a problem. Or as long as you have floating licenses, that you can connect to, you might have to tell us that you need external connectivity as well, so that we will open the floating licenses to be accessible from outside. But it's just the licensing. We like a SaaS offering doesn't have anything to do with installing an EA in your local machine.
Yeah. So can on-premise versions can be upgraded to SaaS version?
Yes, again, if your licenses are active, if they are valid, we will be able to take it from there and migrate to EA SaaS. And if you need to renew it, or you could just use it for the rest of the, so your license validity is all that matters. So yes, if you have an active subscription, you could obviously migrate that to EA SaaS as well.
Okay, so whom to reach out for to move to EA SaaS?
So you please drop us a note, you could collaborate@sparxsystems.com, and we'll be able to assist you from there. So collaborate@sparxsystems.com.
Okay, thanks, Nizam. So I think we can answer some of the queries via the Teams channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Nabil, for facilitating the session, and thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate your time, and it's your presence and attendance that's been making this conference really worth its efforts, and it's incredibly motivating for us, the organizing team, to see so many people turn up and ask questions and involve themselves. I hope it's been useful for you so far as well, and we still have a really exciting lineup of speakers coming from now. So, you know, it's kind of moving to the prime time after this. So we have Gillian, and we have Peter Lieber, and we have Daniel, and like the best of the Sparx world speaking from now. Like, you know, you'll see an exciting lineup of speakers. We invite you, we request you to continue participating in these sessions and get the best out of it. Thanks again.
Thanks, Nizam. Thanks for explaining, taking up all the questions, and going through all the pieces of EA SaaS and giving a good clarity how users can also shift from on-premise to the newer version. Thanks everyone for your time during the session. I hope it was very informative and gave you deeper insights into the topic. Nizam and his team will be available for any queries on the Teams channel. And if you still face any issues with reaching out to Teams, you can write to registrations at eaglobalsummit.com. I'm just pasting the link to the chat in the chat, and also the Teams link. So thanks once again, everyone, and looking forward to hosting you all in another wonderful session at the summit shortly. Thanks, Nizam.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.